Well, thank you. Obrigado. Uh, Hola and boa tarde. Falo pouco Português. Uh, just to save my embarrassment and your ears. My wife and I are enrolled in Portuguese language school down the beach. We moved to the Algarve 18 months ago. I live about 800 meters up the beach, and I hope we'll touch on why we chose the Algarve, Albufeira specifically, but really the Algarve in general. And look forward to chatting. And George and I know each other. We've done this once before. My background's architecture, his landscape architecture, so we'll try not to be too painful for the engineers in the room.
Yeah, tough time for them now. Well, thank you, and congratulations to the organization. A real pleasure to be sharing the stage with Will. And yeah, so like the fireside chat format is a bit different. We're going to shift it a bit to the seaside chat, more because we don't see much fire. But in any case, Will really does have this impressive background in running a major city, very inspiring. Unfortunately, I still don't know it, but I have to go there, especially South by Southwest. It's really something that shines in the horizon and really makes us want to drive in that direction. In my case, I pretty much have this big experience in local government. But be it as a lay officer and then as a chief information and innovation officer. And then obviously, like over time, shifted into becoming an advisor within the space of the smart cities. So it blends into this challenge, which is innovation, particularly urban innovation. But obviously, I think Will has really got some really neat and impressive examples from running a city. And specifically in managing energy, because that's the new frontier for competition among cities and even for tech. As you can see now with all the development associated with AI, this is really becoming the new frontier for competition among the big tech companies themselves. And so that is something that's going to blend into how cities compete also to bring on board these technological companies. So yeah, it would be great to listen to Will's experience in that field.
Well, what I'd like to do, without taking too much time, for the members of the audience who probably know nothing about Austin, Texas, do know that it's a very significant technology hub now. And but the genesis of it, I would argue, reminds me of what I experience and feel here in the Algarve. So Austin happens to be the capital city of the state of Texas. The state of Texas is a little bit larger than France geographically, so it's a big place. 4 of the 10 largest cities in the U.S. are in Texas. Austin found itself forever in the triangle of Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. Big industrial cities. Texas's industrial legacy, maybe sadly, was oil and gas. Austin is the only place in the state of Texas that doesn't have any oil and gas. It's a very unique geology there. And because of the unique geology, we also have a very unique environment. We have, it's green. We have lots of water. The Colorado River runs through the middle of our downtown. But there was never any oil and gas, so Austin never developed with any kind of industrial infrastructure whatsoever. No smokestacks, no shipping, nada. Meanwhile, as Texas grew from 5 million to 30 million people, it was the powerhouses of those 3 big industrial cities that had all the growth. Austin was sort of a quiet, sleepy college town. And so because there was no industry, the people who were young people who had moved to Austin, in part to go to universities, there are some good universities there, they were what I call the runt puppies in the litter. They were almost the outcast of those big economies that had shipping and oil and gas and big, messy, usually polluting infrastructure. Well, if you were an environmentalist, you probably moved to Austin. If you loved music, if you were part of the creative class, you moved to Austin. Janis Joplin moved there to start her music career. Willie Nelson moved there to start his music career. Stevie Ray Vaughan moved there to start his business career. So Austin had this, by dumb luck, this built-in advantage in hindsight that we had the creative class of the state of Texas, whether we knew it or not, whether we liked it. And so just as, technology really becomes digitized, right? We found ourselves we had independent filmmakers, we had musicians, we had gamers, but we had no industry. We had no port. We barely had an airport, no shipping. But we had this young, I'd call vibrant, creative, not necessarily educated, but creative class. And lo and behold, the world discovered us. As Austin continued to just grow just generically, because when you're the capital of a big state, your population is going to grow also. People started sort of thinking, this wasn't the town that I moved to 20 years ago. And I got credited, it's not entirely deserved, but I got credited with starting what's called the Keep Austin Weird campaign. And so as corporate, just big box retailers, just normal big business would move to places where there are a lot of people, we started pushing back. And so we Keep Austin Weird. Tie-dye t-shirts became the logo of that theme. And then I started realizing this, and I was an architect, and I wanted to sort of change the physical urban fabric of our town. And so I changed all the building codes. We created, renewable energy funds. We had a lot of pro-environmental policies to keep our air and our waters clean, right? To keep our hills pristine, to keep, Austin green. And lo and behold, more and more young people started moving there, not just from the big cities in Texas, but from, other big cities across the U.S. And so the Keep Austin Weird campaign by dumb luck, tied perfectly into a strategy that in the year 2000, people started talking about the rise of the creative class. And that's who Austin was. Median age, the youngest big city in America. Well, then just lo and behold, and from a policy standpoint, we were throwing everything against the wall to see what would stick. And some of them were really dumb ideas, and they're embarrassing to talk about and look back at them now. Some of them turned out to be a brilliant strategy. And seemingly overnight, but I heard it alluded to earlier, it was probably 15 years. All of a sudden, as the creative class, as music and film and gaming digitize and sort of converge on itself, Austin had this pretty unique, business opportunities. We had a kid get kicked out of college, got him Michael Dell. So he got kicked out for selling too many computers out of his dorm room. And so Michael says, "The heck with it, I'll just go ahead and start my business here." He had this unbelievable workforce to work with. But within the next 10 years, when Facebook became Facebook, they had one office. It was in Mountain Home, California. And their second office opened up in downtown Austin, Texas. Didn't go to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Atlanta, anywhere else. They came to Austin. Then Google came. Then Apple came. Apple has over 1 million square meters of office space in Austin now. Then Oracle moved from California to Austin. Then as Tesla becomes Tesla, Tesla moves from California to Austin. And so Austin finds itself now in this, it's a challenge, but a pretty unique space. We still have no industry per se. I mean, Tesla's Gigabattery facility is there. Samsung has the only manufacturing facility not in China or South Korea, and where they press silicon chips. So there's manufacturing, but there's no smokestacks, there's no, pollution. And so sorry for taking so long, George, but my take on what's needed for creative cities is, one, listen to the creatives, and they're probably moving to a place like the Algarve because we have blue flag beaches, we have fabulous weather as an overall rule, and so if you can continue to be attractive to young people, particularly young people, and of course the holy grail of demographics is if you can start attracting 25 to 34-year-olds to your town or your region, that's the sweet spot. If they're 25 years old, they probably have whatever education they're going to have, and they probably have one. And so, the Algarve could, I think with sustained, policy directive, could be even more attractive to, a group of educated young people who are creative. They want to stay in Portugal or certainly stay in Europe, and it could tie in so well to some things that we've heard earlier. So I'm just a witness of it's the creative class, young people, and young people usually want to move to a place that's fun, outdoor recreation, live music festivals. Austin's nowhere near a beach. If Austin had a beach, there'd be 50 million people there. But so just think about why a young person would want to move to a place to have fun, and then meanwhile, lo and behold, they're going to need to have a job. And my lesson learned is that the jobs follow the people now. It used to be people would go finding jobs, right? And the American, sort of a model of building your local economy was you'd build something big. You'd dredge a ship channel, or you'd build a giant airport, or Detroit would start, building the car industry. You do something, it's almost always polluting as hell. And then tens of thousands of people would move to those cities because they had jobs, and most of the jobs were industrial based. That model is completely upside down now. The jobs now follow the talent. They're out looking for young, educated people, particularly creative people. And so my lesson learned is you attract the talent, you keep the talent there that you already have, first and foremost, then you attract more young talent and watch what happens. There's no secrets anymore. The global economy and knowledge economy is too transparent. We start to have a bunch of educated, creative people taking advantage of a lifestyle here, and the jobs with some good strategy, the jobs will come to them. Sorry, George.
Okay, thank you, Will. Well, in my case, which I could add on to this is basically the major challenge for cities, because obviously, like most people, aren't really aware, or other way around. Most people are aware, of local government or government itself when it becomes a problem. So they're collecting taxes or asking you for some bureaucracy. But I don't know. Does anyone in the room have an idea what's the value? What's the percentage of the value of public procurement within Europe? Above 5%? Below 50%? I'll tell you, it's 14%. So 14% isn't much of GDP. But if we're thinking about GDP of last year, 1,700 billion euros. And so 14% of that, we're just talking about the European context, it's quite a sum. And obviously this goes into basic expenditure, but there is a reasonable amount of it that goes into tech. And when we're talking about tech, obviously you got the big players, and that's one share. But what's important in building this ecosystem is really to, in some manner, nurture these new companies that are cropping up. They're addressing specific problems, because even in the smart city space, this is a common criticism that many times you see solutions being forked out, and then they go around looking for the problems. but obviously things really need to happen on the other way around. So if we're working within a specific context, and also speaking to what Will spoke about this uniqueness, because that's what makes us different, and what we witnessed, because BABLE has already got, it's a startup, but it's working, it's already going on to 7 years. And so it started off from Stuttgart, and then it's been growing, and now expanding into Portugal. It just bought a company in Chile, already in the US, and it's also got operations going in Vietnam. So it's a bit all over the globe, and so it gives us this understanding of the globe and the different practices. And one thing that is unique is this way that each territory addresses its own challenges. And so many times there are solutions that are developed specifically for the challenges that are more stressing or more urgent in specific territories. But then obviously the way that it is addressed, also the entrepreneurs behind the specific solution, sometimes it propels something that goes way beyond the territory. So that's where we see, taking this advantage point of looking at the European context and even a bit wider, this is a place where a space of opportunity is public procurement in itself. Because then when we do procure, and that's where we step in, we want to look for a sweet spot. You don't want to go for a very soft a guaranteed solution, and many times sometimes it can become it's actually legacy, overpriced. It's not really addressing what you need. And looking at the opposite of the spectrum, which is these new companies, young entrepreneurs are really hungry to really get things done. Many times you can really get unexpected solutions. And by nurturing these unexpected solutions, most probably they will solve your problem, and they can potentially scale. And so that is something that we see happening. And obviously, in this case, what we see here in Algarve, obviously, it's feeding into this, and most probably we will witness many solutions of the sort that will come along. But just to end. And on this idea that Will spoke about the creative class. So this Richard Florida's idea that goes back to 2012, 22, so it's something like over 20 years old. And so what we see, you have the 3 T's, the talent, we've spoken much along today this morning, tech, also mentioned, then the tolerance, obviously, the weirdness a bit. We need this weirdness, and so I guess Algarve needs to address the weirdness, or else you'll be just keeping to the beach and sun. And but finally, a fourth T is it's territory and territorial assets. So we're talking about specific ground, specific people, specific problems, and so this is where we see major opportunities. So obviously, there are several problems that are happening here in our region that are shared with other regions. And if they're not shared now, they're going to be shared over time. And so even yesterday, it was a kickoff for who mentioned earlier of a desalination plant. It's going to be the first in Portugal. And so it's something that obviously it's a solution. It's going to come with its problems. But then obviously let's look into it as an opportunity to take advantage of this uniqueness. And it will obviously be something that will scale. And let's take advantage of this. Let's look into these problems and flip the coin. So what is a problem? Many times really becomes, it's an opportunity in disguise. And so basically, yeah, I guess that's the key elements I'd mention.
So George talked a bit about, sort of the government policy and funding. My take on, living now in the Algarve is, sort of obviously the Algarve is sort of it seems to me, I guess I can say this, not being in office or anything, it's an afterthought when it comes to anything other than tourism investment. I'm talking generally about probably the perspective in Lisbon, perspective with the government, but that's exactly what Austin was. Austin was this redheaded stepchild, we used to, call ourselves. Whereas the state would allocate funds, it would be to the other cities that already had the jobs, already had the infrastructure. And so they would just continue to sort of build on that. And Austin got really very little of that kind of attention from, it, in our case, the big state government. But so I think the Algarve, finds itself in a similar position in some ways. I don't know the real particulars. I know there are a lot of people working on with the CDR and other entities, to try to look at the investments across the region. But I think I just see and sense it setting up not unlike places like Austin. And Austin's, pretty unique in how it got so big so fast. But there are, many other places, as you all know, certainly in the U.S. and Europe, where in a smaller scale, there's good, significant, measurable, technology growth. So it doesn't have to be these big victories from either a funding source from, a federal or regional government. It can be, small, incremental improvements. But my lesson is don't take our eyes off of what would bring the young creative talent here to begin with. And I start with blue flag beaches, and then I try to figure out, okay, how can that also relate to relatively affordable workforce housing? And I know that, guys like me are part of the problem, as more wealthier sort of expat move to anywhere in Portugal, but certainly in the Algarve, you see this dichotomy of housing construction techniques and housing, and therefore housing prices. And so you can't take your eye off what will be the experience of a young person moving here, that you certainly protect the environment, but also, work with individual local governments to make sure that, affordable workforce housing is somewhere part of that housing mix. And I think it's a real challenge, to keep that balance. And Austin's, growth like Austin had is a double-edged sword. It's, there's economic opportunity, there's, business startups and all of that. The other edge of the sword is, there's more traffic, there's more challenges on water and air quality. But the biggest challenge that Austin has faced is the cost of housing for the working class, goes through the roof, and it becomes unaffordable. So it's, but again, I think, with George and so many people George has been in both private and public sector in the Algarve, is, there has to be this continuum of discussion about, what are the assets, but what are the big challenges? And my suspicion, looking around, even in my neighborhood up the street, is the challenge of affordable workforce housing for these young people that we want to be keeping here, but also attracting.
Yeah, I guess so. We're in this tough position of being the barrier to lunch. So I guess, I don't know if there's any questions, or would just jump ahead for lunch.